Today's daf is daf Ayin Ches, and we're up to Tanya Ida. So we have a second brisa, and this brisa is going to go in the opposite direction of the previous brisa that we had. It says in the parsha of Nedarim in Matos, Bamidbar Lamed, Vaydaber Moshe el Roshei HaMatos, Livnei Yisrael Lemar, Zeh HaDavar Asher Tziva Hashem. And the Brisa addresses these two words, Zeh HaDavar, and comes to teach us the following, that whatever is written in the parsha is likuva. And in the parsha, it tells us about Hafar Sabal. And that's telling us that the only way that the neder could be mufar is if the Baal is made for the neder. Zeh HaDavar, only through the Baal. And it's coming to exclude the ein chacham mefer. The chacham could not be mefer. And that means the following, that the hafara of the Baal is mikan ulahava, whereas the heter chacham is meikara. So this is fundamentally different. And furthermore, the hafara of the Baal is automatic, whereas the hatara of the Chacham is contingent upon the fact that he finds a Pesach or Charot. And then once he finds a Pesach or a Charot, it can be Mate U'Mafrei. The Brisa continues. Sheyochol. If not for this drasha, I might have thought to derive the following conclusion from a Kal V'chomer. Ma Baal Eino Matir. The Chacham has a greater power than the Baal. The Baal cannot be Matir. And we never found in the Torah that the Baal could be Matir. We find that the Baal could be Mefer. So in that sense, the Baal is sort of inferior in his power vis-a-vis the neder of his wife to the Chacham, because he cannot be Matir. But nevertheless, even though the Baal is on a lower scale in terms of ultimate ability, his ultimate ability to destroy the neder, undo the neder, but nevertheless, Chacham is greater than the Baal. The Baal only has the option of Mefer, whereas the Chacham has Matir. So if the Chacham could be Matir, which means that he's Oker, the Neder Meikaro, and that makes him that much greater than the Baal. And not only that, the very fact that the Torah gave the Chacham the ability and the power to be Matir, where the Baal is denied such authority, that itself indicates that the Chacham is on a higher level and has more power than the Baal. You say, no, Din Shem Mefer. I would think, therefore, how much more so if the Baal, who's on a lower level, could be Mefer, then the Chacham, certainly, who is on a higher level and he could be Matir, certainly he could be Mefer. And that means the following, that if the Chacham could remove the Neder Meikara through Pesach or Charata, then how much more so through Hafara he could remove the Neder Mikan Lahaba from now and on. Talmud Gomer. Therefore, the Torah says Zeh HaDavar, which tells you that it has to be this way, exactly as formulated in the Torah, which means that the Torah goes out of its way to tell you Zeh HaDavar, that the Baal has the power to be Mefer. And it's coming Lafuke Baal Mefer V'ein Chacham Mefer. Chacham, if he uses the language of the Baal of Mufarlach, it's worthless. Now the Gemara brings a brisa that presents a Gzeira Shava. And this Gzeira Shava is between the parsha of Nedarim, Hataras Nedarim, where it says Zeh HaDavar, and the parsha of Shchutei Chutz, where you take a behemoth kodshim and you shecht it outside the Azara. And there too it says Zeh HaDavar. What is the Torah teaching us with this Gzeira Shava? Nemar Khan, in the parsha of Nedarim, it says Zeh HaDavar. Nemar Lahalon. In Vayikra Parak Yud Zayin, Ze'adavar, it says, with regard to Shchutei Chutz. Ze'adavar, what's the Gzeir Shavah? Ma Shchutei Chutz, Aaron Ubanav Chol Yisrael, Parshas Nedarim, Aaron Ubanav V'Chol Yisrael. So we're going to derive from Shchutei Chutz, where everyone's equal. And it says at the beginning of the parasha there in Vayikra Yitzayin, Daber Aaron, Ve'el Banav, Ve'el Kol B'nei Yisrael. So that means the Isa Shchutei Chutz applies straight across the board, including everyone. And so too, the parasha of Nedarim, we're going to apply the same words of Aaron Ubanav V'Chol Yisrael, that Kulam Shavim Bazeh. And the Gemara is going to explain my nafkamina, what does that mean, kulam shavim? And that has to do with the parasha of Hataras Nedarim. Now we flip it around the other way. We're going to derive now something from the parasha of Nedarim that sheds a light on the parasha of Shchutei Chutz. Makan, in Nedarim it says, Roshei Hamatos, Afla Halon, so to in Shchutei Chutz, Roshei Hamatos, and the Gemara is going to explain. So the Gemara now asks, Parshas Nedarim, what are you telling me that from this Gzeir Shavah to Shchutei Chutz, you derive that in Parshas Nedarim, all Bnei Yisrael are equal? My hilchas, so my nafkamina, what does it teach me? That you don't need mumchim, but Kol Yisrael, if you get a tribunal of 3 hedyotos, they're not great scholars, they're not experts in Nedarim, nevertheless they could be matir and ned. And that's based on the pasuk of Kol Yisrael that appears in the parasha of Shchutei Chutz and is now being transferred over to the parasha of Hataras Nedarim. Now let's point out one thing here. When it says hedyotos, the Ran points out, and the Rashba and other Rishonim, it doesn't mean hedyotos in the literal sense, which means an amorit, someone who's an imbecile, but rather he has to reach at least the minimum level of what's called Mizbri Lahu V'Savri. In other words, if you teach him what the halacha is all about and the reasons for it, they can understand, they can comprehend. So in order to be Matir Neder, when these 3 adyotos are taught, and they don't know Kol HaTorah Kula, but you teach them what is Charota mean, what is a Pesach, and they can understand, and therefore they could be Matir the Neder. So we ask the following question. You're taking the Kol Yisrael from Parashat Shchutei Chutz and you're grafting it onto the Parashat Nedarim to teach you that Hataras Nedarim does not require a mumche. But wait a second, let's look in the Parashat of Nedarim itself. It opens up with the words Vaydaber Moshe el Roshei Hamatos. And Roshei Hamatos means that Hataras Nedarim has to be implemented by Roshei Hamatos, by great leaders in Klal Yisrael, not by the run-of-the-mill Pshutei Ha'am, the citizens on the street. Rav Chizda, Item Rav Yochanan, B'Yachid Mumche. When the Torah says Roshei Hamatos, that they are Matir Nedarim, it's telling you that even they could be Matir Nedarim. Each one of those Roshei Hamatos, which are Mumchim, they're experts in the laws of Hataras Nedarim, and they, each and every one of them, has the status of Roshei Hamatos and can single-handedly be Matir the Neder. That's in addition to the Kol Yisrael that we derive from the Gzeir Shavah to Shchutei Chutz, which implies that 3 adyotos is sufficient. So the Torah is adding on here with Roshei Hamatos an alternative method of Hataras Nedarim, not to exclude the possibility of Shlosh Adyotos. Now we should mention here the Shita of one of the Rishonim quoted by the Ran, that a Yachid Mumcha has to be a Samuch. He has to have Smicha. And the Rambam disagrees very vehemently and explicitly with that Shita in Hilchos Shvuos Perek Vav, and he establishes that you don't need a Samuch as a Yachid Mumcha, but rather all you need is that he be a Mumcha in Hataras Nedarim. in that particular area. My Rebbe Rav Soloveitchik had a minhag of standing for all of Chazaras Hashatz on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, as he did the whole year round. And one particular year, he felt he was too weak and he might not be able to live up to his neder. And he asked my father, Rabbi Berzon, he said, get together another 2 rabbis. That was at the Archei Kal in Boston in the summer. And I want you to be mata my neder. So my father turned to Rav Soloveitchik and he said, Rebbe, why do I need 2 other rabbis? Ich bin a yochid mumcha. My father had a sense of humor. So the Rav answered him in Yiddish, I'll say, he said, as du bist the yochid mumcha, weiß ich nicht. Aber sie seinen het yoites, bin ich sicher. In any event, so the Gemara tells us the following. Va Amar Rav Chizda, v'itema Rav Yochanan b'yochid mumcha. Fine. Now the Gemara asks the following. The Brisa had established that we're going to derive something from Parshas Nedarim to Shchutei Chutz. In Nedarim it says Roshei Amatos. So the Gemara asks Roshei Amatos for Shchutei Chutz my hilcha. So what do you gain through this Gzeira Shava by cloning Roshei Amatos onto Shchutei Chutz? Rav Sheshes lo mashe yesh she'ela behegdish. So this is a gigantic machlokes, a controversy between Beis Hillel and Beit Shammai. And Beit Shammai are of the opinion that ein she'ela behegdish. The Gemara now is reflecting the contrary opinion that yesh she'ela behegdish, which means that a person was magdish something, and afterwards he changed his mind. And now he wants to be mata the Hegdesh. And Hegdesh, from that perspective, according to Beis Hillel, has the same status as a neder. It's haflas peh. It was chal when he said arezu chatos, etc., etc. And now, if let's say he took this chatos and he shechted it outside the azara, and then he was shoel on his hegdish, and we know that she'ela and hataras chacham is matir l'mafreya. So he's now potter from korban and chatas, even though he violated the chiyuv kares of shchutei chutz, and that's based on the principle of yesh she'ela v'hegdish, which makes it as if he had never taken the hegdish from the beginning because chachar oker and edamei karo. So the Gemara asks, but with Beit Shammai, according to Beit Shammai, who holds that ein she'ela behegdish. Now, the shita of Beit Shammai, 1 second, is the following. Beit Shammai holds that Hegdesh b'tos havi Hegdesh, which means the following. Beis Hillel l'shitaso applies the universal halach of tos, which breaks up the das and therefore the ma'aser, to Hegdesh as well. He made a mistake and he was magdish the animal. At the time that he was magdish, he didn't realize that this was a mistake on his part. Later on, when he discovers his mistake, the hegdish is butter. And alternatively, what the magdish can do after he made the hegdish is he can come to a chacham or 3 hedyotos and tell them that I made a mistake when I was magdish, and like any neder, they can be maked. However, that's according to Beis Hillel. Beit Shammai are of the opinion that hegdish b'tos havi hegdish. There's a unique halach in hegdish, that even if you'll tell me you made a mistake when you were magdish it, but once the hegdish is chal and the guf habehema is now kadosh, you cannot remove that kedusha even through the mechanism of tos, and therefore the she'elas chacham, which is meant to make the hakadosha, the original neder, into a tos, is not going to be meaningful because tos is not mevatel hegdish, according to the Shita Beit Shammai, which is recorded in the Gemara Nazir, Daf Lamed Amid Beis. So now we have the question, according to Beit Shammai, if there's no Sheila Behegdish, so what does the Gzeir Shava Roshei Matos borrowing from the Nedarim and cloning it onto Shutei Chutz, what does it teach me? And the Gemara answers, Beit Shammai leslahu Gzeir Shava. They never had this Gzeir Shava of Zeh HaDavar. Now it seems that Beit Shammai are not arguing about Gzeir Shava in general. They're not saying that there's no such thing as a drasha and a derivation from Gzeir Shava. But they're of the opinion that in this particular case, the Gzeir Shava was not accepted. And it seems that there was a tradition and various contradictory traditions as to what exactly were the Gzeir Shavos that were given to Moshe Rabbeinu at Har Sinai. So now the Gemara says the following. Okay, you're telling me that according to Beit Shammai, we don't have the Gzeir Shava Zeh HaDavar. But let's ask a very naive and simple question. Zeh HaDavar Parsha Nedarim l'may ksiv. So within the Parsha of Nedarim, confined to that Parsha where it says Zeh HaDavar, not to derive conclusions elsewhere to Shutei Chutz, but l'may ksiv, why did the Torah say Zeh HaDavar? And the Gemara answers, Lomar, this teaches us that Chacham Matir v'ein Baal Matir. Baal Mefer v'ein Chacham Mefer. It means that if we compare the Chacham to the Baal, each one has one up-it on the other. On the one hand, the Chacham has one up-it, he could be Matir, and as we learned earlier, the Baal cannot be Matir. So if the Baal would say to his wife about her neder mutalach, that would be meaningless. On the other hand, the Baal could say meferlach. If the Chacham says meferlach, it's meaningless. The Chacham has to be matir b'loshen mutalach, and the Baal b'loshen mufarlach. Any switch the other way around is not accepted. And that's why the Torah says in the Parsha of Nedarim, Zeh HaDavar, to differentiate and contrast between the Baal and the Chacham. So the Gemara now asks, but Zeh HaDavar Shutei Chutz l'may ksiv. Bishleim, according to Beis Hillel, we have the Gzeir Shava of Zeh HaDavar. But according to Beit Shammai, don't have that Gzeir Shava. So why did the Torah say in the Parsha of Shutei Chutz Zeh HaDavar? Lomar al Ashchita Chayav v'Eino Chayav al Hamalika. So with regard to Ophos, an Oph Kodshim, the din is that if he shechts the Oph Kodshim outside the Azara, he's Chayav for Shutei Chutz. And the Chiddush here is that inside the Azara, we don't shech the Oph, we do Malik of the Oph from the Oref with the thumbnail. And even though that's the Derech HaKsher B'Bifnim, he'll be chayav for chutz only through shchita. So Zeh HaDavar is telling you that this parsha of shchita applies even to Ophos, Kodshim, in which you're chayav for shchutei chutz, but not for malika b'chutz. And that's the pella here of the Chiddush. We would have thought that the chi of karis of shchutei chutz is for implementing the exact pa'ula, the exact ma'isa that he would have had to done b'fnim. He did it b'chutz. No. In the case of Ophos, the ma'isa that he would have had to require to do inside is the ma'isa of malika, and yet he'll be parted from malika b'chutz on an Oph Kodesh. He'll only be chai for shchita, this despite the fact that there's no shchita of Ophos b'fnim. Now, according to Beit Shammai, that we don't have the Gzeir Shava, so the words in the parsha of Shchutei Chutz B'nai Yisrael are not transposed onto Nedarim. So therefore the Gemara asks, El Beit Shammai lahachsha shlosha diotos minolan. We derived shlosha diotos for Ataras Nedarim from Bnei Yisrael through the Gzeir Shava. How does Beit Shammai derive that same halach of shlosha diotos for Ataras Nedarim? And the Gemara answers, Nafkalu midrav Asi Rav Nosson. Now, Rabbi Asi is going to have a problem with the Brisa, as we'll soon see, and it's going to take Rav Sheshes to explain the Brisa. And the Ksiv in the Parsha of Moedos, in Emor, Vayikra Chav Gimel, Vayidaber Moshe B'adei Hashem al Bnei Yisrael Vatanya, and we learned in a Brisa, Rabbi Yossi Aglili Omer, and this is going to be a very strange statement in the Brisa, that Moadei Nemru, that the Torah is telling us that this parsha and some din, which the Gemara is going to clarify later, is limited to Moed, to the regalim. And that's to exclude Lo Nemra B'Shabbos Breish, not to exclude, and that's coming to exclude Shabbos. The Gemara is going to immediately object because in that very same parsha, in Emor, Shabbos is mentioned. So how can you exclude Shabbos? Total gibberish. Doesn't make any sense. Ben Azay says that the words Moadei Hashem are coming to exclude Parshas Nedarim. So Rav Asi Bar Nosson, Kashalei Hod Masnisim. So Rav Asi didn't understand the words of this price, and he's looking high and low for Rav Sheshes. He comes Osan Laidoi, look how many Rav Sheshes, Lo Ashkechem. Rav Sheshes was away, out of his desk. So he found out that Rav Sheshes was on his way to Machoza, and Rav Asi is not going to stop there. He tried in Ardoi, now he's on his way to Machoza till he catches up with Rav Sheshes. Amalei, so Rav Asi finally gets to Rav Sheshes. Moadei Hashem Nemar V'lo Nemar Shabbos Breishis Imon V'Ksiv Shabbos Imayim. The pasuk itself mentions Shabbos, so how can you exclude Shabbos and assume that the pasuk and the parsha is limited to Moadim? Besu, and furthermore, I don't understand Ben Azai. Moadei Hashem Nemar V'lo Nemar Parshas Nedarim Imayim V'Misitra Ksiva. At the end of the parsha of Moedos, we find the parsha of Nedarim. And at the end of Parshas Pinchas, the Torah presents in Bamidbar Chavtes all the Moadim. That's the kriya that we have for the Moadim from Pinchas. And immediately after the end of Parshas Pinchas, at the beginning of Parshas Matos, so we're going now from Bamidbar Perek Chavtes, one chapter further to Bamidbar Perek Lamed, we have the Parsha Nedarim at the beginning of Matos. So what are you telling me? That Eila Moadei Hashem is coming to exclude Parshas Nedarim. Amalei, so Rav Sheshes is now going to take apart this brisa and is going to explain the brisa.